shifted entirely. I have been eye-opened. I have seen just how corrupt the media is. I have seen just how corrupt politics can be on both sides and how that operation really works. I've been spiritually awakened. I grew up in the church. I'm very fortunate for the family foundation that I have, how they raised me in the church, and so I've always been spiritual. But this past year, I feel like I have so clearly seen how God works and how he puts people in positions that they by no means feel equipped for. I still don't feel equipped for doing what I'm doing and for fighting what I'm fighting. That being said, I've seen so clearly how the devil works and how he moves through people and how he moves through organizations. So yes, this past year, I feel as if I've matured in a way that you can't go through unless you're directly impacted by something like this, which is unfortunate, of course. But that being said, I don't look at myself as any sort of victim. I really look at this situation and what happened to me as something that's optimistic, because it's given me the opportunity to talk about this. It's given me the opportunity to shed light on this in a way that very few people in my position have thus far. I think obviously for certain reasons, one of them being they're so fearful. They're so fearful of this cancel culture that we live in. They're scared to be labeled any of the labels, and I've been called them all. For simply saying men and women are different, you get called transphobic, you get called homophobic. They lump racist in there, which blows my mind because this has absolutely nothing to do with race, but they'll call you it. And these people are terrified of that. And naturally, no one wants to be called those things. But I've realized now, does it make someone transphobic to say that there are only two sexes? Does it make someone transphobic to say you can't change your sex and that women are rightfully deserving of equal opportunities and fairness and safety and privacy? And if it does, then by all means, call me it, throw it my way. I'm a lot more scared of not standing firm in the truth than I am of being called those things. So that's kind of been my outlook and how it's really shifted this past year.
So one of the things that I haven't seen people talk much about, or I don't think I've seen anyone talk about, but when you reference like, hey, I'm in the locker room, this guy's undressing, he's kept his bat and balls, I'm a woman, I have to undress here, other women have to undress here. One of the issues I never hear talk about is like, you're married and have a husband, and how is that fair to him? I mean, would you want your husband undressing with a bunch of women in a woman's locker room? Why would your husband want you undressing with a man in a man's locker room? It's incomprehensible to me that people don't think about these issues. It's unfair to your husband.
Absolutely, it is. It's also, I also have a dad who's, he played SEC football. He played in the NFL for a long time. He's a very big, your typical Tennessee guy. And when I called him, both him and my husband, they were at this gym meet. It was at Georgia Tech in Atlanta. First of all, we weren't forewarned we'd be sharing a locker room. No one told us we would be sharing this changing space. So the only time that we became aware that we were was when we saw Thomas disrobing. Again, a 6'4", 22-year-old male dropping his clothes fully intact with an exposing male genitalia. That's how we became aware that we would be undressing next to him. And so I immediately left that locker room and I called my dad and I called my husband. And when I called my dad and I told him, Dad, we just had to undress next to a man. My dad was there watching the meet and he says, Riley, I'm coming down there and I'm going to handle this myself. And I said, Dad, you can't do that. We already have one man in the locker room. We definitely don't need two. And I don't want to have to talk to you through bars at a jail cell. So don't come down here. We'll handle this. And so I went out of the locker room and I asked one of the officials on the pool deck, I said, what are the guidelines to allow a male with male parts to undress in our women's locker room? And so nonchalantly, this official said, oh, well, we actually just got around this by making the locker rooms unisex, no big deal. And so then I'm sitting there thinking, unisex? So any man could have walked into our locker room any coach, any official, any parent, any dad, any man who wanted to, any pervert who wanted to be in that locker room would have had full access and full reins, and bare minimum, we weren't told about it. It felt like this feeling of betrayal. It felt like the people who were supposed to be there to protect us and protect our privacy had failed miserably, again, not even alerting us that this would be the situation at hand until we had to see it with our own eyes. It was disgusting, it was perverse, it's obviously, it's wrong, it's unethical, it's immoral. It's crazy to think that this is, actually, not only is it just happening, it's almost as if it was being celebrated. It was being encouraged to happen, because after this meet, Thomas, again, a male who swam 3 years on the men's team at University of Pennsylvania, a very mediocre male, ranking 462nd in the country at best the year prior. After this meet, Leah Thomas was nominated for NCAA Woman of the Year, which is why I say this is being encouraged. How are we nominating this person for Woman of the Year, which is the most prestigious collegiate honor for female athletes? I was also nominated, but this nomination immediately was devalued to me when I saw that Thomas was nominated as well.
So, listening to you talk about your dad and his instincts, because those are thoughts that have run through my mind. What if this was my daughter? And to hear that your dad, former Vanderbilt football player, former NFL football player, his instincts are right. Like, I'm coming down there to take care of this baby, get out of my way. How have you kept him at bay, and how have you kept him, being able to sleep at night? Because that is, like, I've said that if this was my daughter, I just don't know if I'd want her out there in this way. But clearly they've raised you in a way that you're going to stick to your values and you're willing to take on this fight. Just your mom and dad sound like really unique people.
They absolutely are. And again, I talked about my family foundation. I think why my parents have kind of stayed back and let me handle this is because they know I can handle this. Unfortunately, they know my stubbornness. They know my sass. They get it. They saw it for 18 years before I went to college. And while they didn't necessarily appreciate it at the time, they most certainly do now. My dad, he knows I'm a leader. I was team captain at University of Kentucky in my years there, my junior and senior year. He knows that I'm unwavering. He knows that I'm not going to back down from what I know to be right, from the biblical truth, from biological reality, from, of course, objective truth. And they know that. And again, I couldn't be more fortunate for the support that I have with them, with my friends, with my teammates, with my coaches and my athletic director, who have been so incredibly supportive of me. After this all happened, before I took a public stance, I immediately called my athletic director. And his name is Mitch Barnhart at the University of Kentucky, and he's a phenomenal guy. We had an amazing relationship, of course, before this. But I called him, and I said, Mitch, this is what's happening. This is how we feel. And when I say we, I meant my team at the University of Kentucky, because we talked about this, and we all felt how I'm speaking to you. I said, how do you feel, Mitch, if I take a public stance in acknowledging that this is wrong and it's harmful to women? And he said, Riley, I love you. I support you. I'm behind you. He said, I will never forget. He said, speak your heart, stay true to your convictions, and don't worry about painting this university in a bad light. And at the time, I thought nothing of it. I thought, okay, sounds great, thank you. Hung up the phone. But now, after talking to other girls at other universities, he is the only athletic director in the NCAA who has taken that approach. Bar some Christian schools, especially of the SEC, of the ACC, of the Power Five, he's the only one who has said this. And I've talked to these girls at these other universities, and the silencing that they're dealing with, it's truly chilling. It's terrifying to think that these institutions and these universities have this much weight and this much fear instilling, that they're enabling all of their women's sports teams to really be silenced.
Riley, I need you to give me 60 seconds to take care of another one of our fronts, but I want to ask you about Samantha Ponder and Sage Steele, some people with some big platforms that are starting to show you some support. but I want to talk a little bit about our good friends at Preborn. You guys know Preborn. I have to admit, it's probably my favorite sponsor. They have given us a purpose here at Fearless. We have developed a mindset about when life begins at conception, and we know that supporting life in the womb is the key to developing the right mindset and the right attitude on life outside the womb. You can't properly develop life and wait until it's outside the womb. You know that talking to your baby while in the womb increases, reading to your baby increases the baby's intelligence. No, it's undeniable that life begins inside the womb. Preborn recognizes that, and that's why expectant mothers who are thinking about abortion, Preborn provides them an ultrasound to provide them the ultimate proof that life begins inside the womb. They show a woman that heartbeat, they show them that ultrasound, that image of the baby inside their womb. Women then choose life, and that's when Preborn really gets into the game, providing women the tools, the accessory items, the help and support, both financially and mentally, to get them through the first 2 years of that baby's life, in the womb and outside the womb. It is an awesome experience to donate money and support Preborn.